students with learning disabilities. The article talks about a lot of the increase in students who are English learners and like the increase over the years. And I think or the increase of English being a second language, which in turn is an English learner. I think that's very interesting, and I think it goes to show like the path where we're going, and as far as the nation and everything, I think it's a really beautiful thing because inclusion is beautiful. But as far as like, identifying students with the learning disabilities, I know we talked about it in class in the 501, but it's that standardized test and assessment that shows that whether this person has a disability or the student has a disability or not while being English. And in the article, it says the use of standardized tests in the assessment of ELLs with or without disabilities has resulted in much debate among psychologists, social scientists, and educators, which was brought up in class as well, which I think was interesting because the student's first language might be English, but the parents' first language is something else, and it's not spoken. The student doesn't know that themselves, so they would have to take this test still, regardless, because there's another language in the household, even though they don't know it, which I thought was interesting. So the article goes on to talk about different ways to combat it. One thing I did find interesting from it was if a student does speak multiple languages, like to combat the test, you can compare the student's performance in both a native and secondary language, just to collect just the data to see if the student really has a disability, or is it just they're proficient in both languages, or if they're just mixing it, like how we mentioned in class, like Spanglish sometimes. So, and then you can attack it that way. It's not really disability, just like separating the two. So that's what basically quick summary of what I found.
Okay, and then for number two, what are the research-based academic and behavioral strategies that can be used with your specific culturally and linguistic diverse students? In let's say, like, for example, if I choose the grade as freshman in high school and the age to be 14, 15, and the context to be in English class, since that would be like high school and they're like during English, we could say that some of the strategies, like in the article was saying, was to demonstrate social skill instructions, self-monitoring techniques, and role playing. I guess in instance, role playing would be like they were explaining how important it is for teachers to kind of provide a comfortable space for the students to speak the native language. Let's say, like, if the teacher knows that native language, for example, Spanish, to include Spanish within their lessons, as well as allowing students to code switch, which is very big because in my undergrad, when I was learning Spanish, because my major was Spanish, code switching in the classroom wasn't allowed. It was actually looked down upon when you're trying to acquire like a fluent Spanish, like a very fluent Spanish. It's very looked down upon when people speak Spanglish. So I thought that was very interesting how code switching can actually aid these English learners, like allowing them to kind of, for example, speak Spanglish. Another thing is for teachers to instruct in guided practice in classroom. For example, like show them an example of what to do, but kind of translate along the way. So I thought that was very, very important, and especially like if we look back to, well, I don't, Sam, I know you're not in our 501 class, but we saw this video where they were doing like this test on this English learner, and she was speaking fluently, like socially fluently, but then when it came down to like material vocabulary, like academic like fluency, she wasn't really speaking very fluent. So it just demonstrates how important it is to kind of teachers provide those vocab words like in translations, kind of show them the connection between words in Spanish, words in English, or other languages. So that's what I got for that.
All right. So for number three here, so are a few web-based resources that we can use to with our specific culturally and linguistically diverse students. So I'm doing special education. The goal is kind of high school. So the Bilingual Special Education Resources Network website, which would probably be the best one. So it provides staff development, technical assistance for teachers for teachers working with students with disabilities and who are English learners. The big one for me is the school I'm at. It's let me pull up the SARC here. It is 14% English learners and 12% students with disabilities. So there is a pretty good overlap between the number of students who are have disabilities, but also the number of students who are English learners. At this school I'm at in particular, it's about 72% Latino and about 24% Asian. And there are a lot of immigrant families, even if the student is like born in the United States. A lot of times they're people in their immediate family were not, and there's a pretty large instance of kids who are multilingual, where they even if they're fluent in English, they do also speak another language at home. So since given 12% of students with disabilities and 14% English learners, the site that, supporting English learning students with disabilities, I think it would be a good one for basically at least what I'm doing at Arroyo High School here in El Monte. So,
Nice.
yeah. Another thing that's interesting, I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, but I know there is kind of an issue with in education there is a tendency to also, I guess, kind of overdiagnose or overassess students who are English learners with disabilities or special needs. So I know that's also kind of an issue, just because the kids struggling because they English is a second language. They said there is this disproportionate. They're disproportionately also identify as having disabilities, and there's a real possibility that just might not be accurate.
That leads me into the question four. That's the question I have, because I
Yeah.
feel you 100%. I'm like, what if this child is just learning? Why are we so quick to write them off as a disabled? And they're completely, you know what I'm saying? They're just like, nobody knows anything right away. We all learn at different speeds. Different. This doesn't mean you're disabled. You might just need a little more time to get the concept. And that's what I want to know for question four. Is just like, after this article, like what are we gonna do, or what do we have as educators that help us? Because it seems like every other child nowadays is getting diagnosed with something that I don't really think they need to be diagnosed with. Like, and it's always this, it's always that. And I'm not taking away from anything. They might actually have that, but I feel like we're seeing a big increase in students with quote unquote disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, growing up, I thought disabilities were like, in the sped classroom, like, it's just like you have Down syndrome. That's what I grew up with. I know you got probably too. Like,
Yeah.
the kids who like physically weren't able to take care of themselves, or mentally like there, like aren't they really there as much, which is, it's sad to see, but it's still a blessing to be like they're able to learn. But nowadays you see kids who have IEPs and stuff, and it's maybe on just like social skills, which I think stem from like the COVID era, because a lot of these kids dealt with the COVID era. But it's just like, that's my main question. As teachers, are we gonna get a list of like, or are we gonna like bring it back down instead of like trying to like separate children, just to keep them included? And then, because I'm cool with that. I don't know. I just feel like we're doing too much right now.
Well, the thing, as far as assessment, so like assessing like disabilities and stuff, that does, I could be mistaken, but my understanding is that does come from a doctor. So like a lot of times, in order to be like, they have to be diagnosed with something from a doctor, and then they get supports from from the school. So and then I know there's also stuff like ADHD that'll get, you could get IEP and and get supports for stuff like that, where the student is not necessarily academically limited, if they have ADHD, but but because of that condition, they might just need some extra support to make sure they're able to do what they need to do.
I get you. I feel like that's common. I feel like I had this sometimes. I had to like work retention was a terrible thing for me. But I had to keep reading and working on it. Like I would read a page and forget everything I read
Yeah.
because my mind was books. So I'm like,
I actually saw it take place on Wednesday, actually, when I was subbing for a kinder class. We had, I was there for coverage, but the teacher came back early from her, whatever she was doing. So she came back and she was like, they asked me if I could be support for her, and I said yes because they stated that she had like 3 students with like behavioral, like high behavioral levels. And I was during the time that she wasn't there, I was actually I didn't even notice, but I was interacting with one of these students, and what was going on is that he didn't speak any English. It was just Spanish, and I kind of realized because like I would talk to him, and he wouldn't listen. He wouldn't follow instructions. So I don't know. Sometimes I usually connect with students to talk with talking Spanish more. So I kind of like was like, um, hola, like, like bringing stuff up. I'm like, me puedes recoger esto, me puedes ayudar con esto. And he was doing it. So after teacher came back, we had like this person observing in there. And I went up to the person and I was like, what are you, like, what are we observing? I was really curious. And then she was like, oh, these 3 students. And I was like, oh, like our little friend here. I was like, what's his diagnosis? He's like, oh, he might be autistic. And I was like, oh, why? And she's like, oh, because he doesn't follow any instructions. And I was like,
oh my
well,
God.
I was like, have we tried talking to him in Spanish? And then she was like, why? And I was like, oh, well, cause I was like, and I brought him over, and I was like, I was like, me puedes ir a traer esa bola que es like color roja, And he would bring it, and I'm like, do you see? Like he listens in Spanish. Like I feel like he doesn't know any English, like because he wouldn't speak it. He wouldn't speak at all. Like I feel like that's something very common with like who are new to a new country, new place, like you don't want to speak, you're shy. Especially if you don't know the language. Like poor little kid, I was just like, yeah. So after a while, like she kind of took reconsideration and she brought one of the speech teacher in and the EOT teacher in to see kind of what was going on in there to kind of see like maybe it was a different thing. But I left for the day. I hope that he didn't get misdiagnosed. Like
Yeah, that's crazy.
but I
Yeah.
was just that kind of just brought it to kind of to life to see that happens. But yeah, so one of my questions is there another way to actually like diagnose students, like something more accurate, especially with like the technology that we have now? I feel like I grew up with the whole home assessment thing. Like if you speak another language, you're automatically put into this. But what's curious is that my brother, he also was home assessed like that, but he doesn't speak any Spanish. He doesn't understand it. Like he doesn't read it, understand it, or speak it. So he got these like he was taking the ELD test, right, for like so long, only to find out that he just wasn't an ELD learner.
Yeah.
So that was crazy to see too.
So my understanding is, I could be wrong, but my understanding is you're at they when kids are enrolled in school, they're asked a question by the district, and part of it is it's like do they speak a language primarily other than English at home or something like that. If the answer to that question is yes, then they're automatically they have to be tested for English learning. It's like it's a state law. So it's like even if a kid's fluent in English, but if the parents say when they like enroll the kid in school that they speak another language other than English primarily, like primarily at home or something like that. I forget exactly what the question is, but if the answer to that question is yes, then the kid like has to be assessed like for whether or not they're an English learner or not.
That's interesting.
So I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure Dr. Freeman might know more about that than I do. But
Yeah, we could definitely bring it up. But yeah, thank you guys. That was a great meeting.
all right,
Appreciate it. Common schedules.
all
Thank
right.
you.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend. Good luck with your game.